loud. And I don't know yet what I'll do with the recordings, but perhaps I'll release all of the things I did in some YouTube channel or something. We'll see.
And us.
Hello again. Beer? So I had a glass of water, but then I put all of the wax from the candle in there. So I'm
We're still on coffee in Canada.
yeah.
Oh yeah, where is
Like
everyone calling in from? I always assume that we're all in the same time zone, but of course we're not.
We're in France.
I'm in France.
Canada. I know Charlie's in Amsterdam. Paul, you're on mute, but I don't know where you are.
Yeah, excuse me. Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you. And I'm dialing in from Berlin, Germany right now.
Cool.
So I'll say a few words about my intention in all of this thing, if you want. So I have a big dislike for slide sessions, for people who know exactly what they want to say and have an agenda and they go by the agenda, and in fact they present slides. It's a one direction talk which is totally prepared. And when I don't like something, I'm trying to take the antithesis of it. Like when I decided to write a blog, I said blogs are all words. So I'll call myself Take 5 and 2. Every blog will be 5 drawings and 2 pieces of music. And because I don't like pre-prepared stuff, what I want to do here, it worked so far, is to talk to people I'm interested in about I have no clue what. And it's better if I didn't talk to them in a long time. So welcome. And see what happens. And like the metaphor that I had in my imagination, that is that we meet for a coffee. And I don't know if you remember coffees before the COVID era, but coffees have also people in other tables. So there's a lot of people in other tables here. And if they hear something interesting, they can say, I just heard you say this. Do you mind if I barge in? And if not, then not. Okay, so that's the intention on my part. Do you bring any intention to this talk?
Me.
Yeah.
Well, to talk to you, because I love talking to you always. And I absolutely did not prepare anything. So yeah, I guess my sort of feeling as well was to just enter into the arena unprepared and
No
see.
arena, it's a small coffee table.
The arena of the coffee table. Still it's a small arena. Yeah, and just sort of I'm interested in the dynamic of having a conversation with you with other people.
Okay.
It's like a game.
Yeah, in fact, it's a game. And like, I want to share, even if it's just us talking for the other people, what happened the first time that I met you. Okay, so we met in a thing called Play 14. I have the shirt by accident. And it's non-conference about serious games, let's say. And there was this creature that looked very much like you, who said, I want to show you something, come outside. And it was the most beautiful activity there, because it was, I think, the only activity that I saw that was purposeless. That was like the activity was, I want everyone to be in a circle, so like there's constraints around, right? Can you describe it?
Yeah, so it's a game that I designed with a few other people. It's called Soulless, and you can play with between 5 and 30 people, let's say, and you start in a circle, and the game is played completely in silence, and there's very few rules, but there are there are a couple rules that kind of structure the interaction or the way that you can behave. First is being in silence. Second is that only one person moves at a time. And when that person is moving, everyone else in the group needs to face that person. So sort of imagine your belly button like turning towards that person. So you get this very interesting dynamic of a large group of people, one person walking, and an entire group of people very intently watching them. And you have to, when you move, you have to pass in between two other players. So you're always in relation to the group in some way, because you're sort of planning your next move. But anyone can move at any time. So there's no turns. Only one person can go at a time, but there's no order. And what you do in your turn, so when you move, is limitless. So some people just walk, some people dance, some people run into the street, some people climb a tree, some people roll around on the ground, some people imitate passersby. Like there's no limit to what you can do on your
And
turn.
also what I remember is that you can take someone by the hand and they go with you.
Yeah, the only way that more than one person can move at a time is if you take them by the hand, you ask, or you non-verbally ask, can I take you by the hand? And they kind of come with you, and people always end up making these long chains without me saying anything about that that's a possibility.
That was my first thought too, to be honest, hearing this.
Yeah.
Like a
So
Polonaise.
this especially happens when so the way that you end the game, everyone has the autonomy to end the game at any time. And the way that you end the game is by taking when you take a turn to come to what you think is the center point of the group of all of the people. And if other people also feel like ending the game, they can come and join you in this central area. But there are always people who don't want to end the game. And there's this tension between the group of people who've kind of voted on ending the game with their move. But then there are people who are still playing. And the people who want to end the game usually use another turn to go and fetch all the other people who are still playing and form a giant chain with them and bring them into the center. And this happens almost every time, which is very bizarre because it's never mentioned anywhere in the explanation. I see a hand is being raised.
Hello, Lily. I have a lot of thoughts about this project you're talking about in particular, but what I'd like to ask is Dov mentioned that what drew him in was the complete purposelessness of this game. Would you agree with Dov's assessment that this is a purposeless exercise?
Well, you kind of have to define purposelessness, I guess, because everything can have, like everything has an inherent purpose. But I guess it's good to mention like that the festival we were at is about serious games. And I don't know if you're familiar with serious games or not, but they're usually games that are designed for a very specific applied purpose. So there's like a very clear kind of lesson that you're trying to learn with that game, or you're trying to teach a team how to interact in a certain way or develop a new mindset. And there's always a kind of planned reflection, aha moment at the end saying, we played this game and now you know about team dynamics, or now you know about a certain, new way of looking at things. But this game doesn't have that aha moment. It doesn't have a specific learning goal. And I think that's what makes it feel purposeless, because there's also there's no way you can win. And for a lot of people, that is what defines a game, is whether you can win, like you winning, the possibility to win. And because this game is completely unwinnable, it feels purposeless.
So now that you say it, I think about it differently. There is a purpose to this game, and the purpose is to show the purposelessness.
Yeah, pretty much. It's
Like it's to expose the void.
mm-hmm.
And it reminds me, I don't know if I told you this. There was an Israeli actor that I adored, like really someone who would break the limits, and he said that when he was in New York, he went to a fringe theater, whatever. So people buy tickets, and then they enter into like a store that is empty, and there's chair inside the store, facing out toward the vitrine, like the glass, toward the outside. And they sit and they wait that something will happen, like that someone will enter, there will be, and there's nothing. And the people passing outside, something strange, like some events start happening and they're strange, and as a spectator you don't know if they were staged for you or do they just occur. And when it ends, he said, you don't know when it ends. At some point you decide that it ends and you go out.
Yeah, this is a perfect example of the type of thing I love to design, actually. That there's this questioning of what is a part of it and what isn't. I think that tension is so interesting. Like also when you're thinking about pervasive games, that games that bleed out of the game and into life.
Yeah.
And since I see life as a game, like all games are pervasive, but it's sort of my mission in a way to help other people see through this game lens, to see that the things bleeding into each other.
So you have a clear mission. It's awesome.
One of them. But I love this example of there's so many things at play there in this performance, like that you're waiting for something to happen, but you're also looking outside at the people, wondering, are they in on it? Are they not? But then you actually become a performance to the outside. So it's like this super meta perspective from every angle. And I love the fact that there's no determined ending. And I always try to design games that don't have a clear ending in the way that we're familiar with, that the game ends when you win. But that everyone sort of decides together, this is the end. And that is kind of radical in a game. because it's very strange, but it's so much more similar to life if you design an experience like that.
And we become philosophical. I have to share with you one more thing that I remember, which is, I think, the most moving statue that I ever saw. Again, in Israel, because I'm from Israel. There is a garden of statues in Jerusalem, and one of them is a huge cement cube. And you enter inside, and in fact, inside you find it has benches, or so the inside square, like benches all over, and there's a huge hole in the ceiling, but in the shape of a frame. So like the ceiling is like this, and it's like someone framed the sky.
Mm-hmm.
And you sit and you see the clouds coming in and out, and a plane, and sometimes the sky is totally blue. And it's like, watching a creation, it's a creation because it's framed and because the intention is for you to see this thing, but it's totally, again, this breaking of looking at things that are natural, but in a context of they were created for you to watch as an artistic experience.
Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure the piece you're talking about is by James Turrell.
You know more
Because
than me.
we have, in the Netherlands, there's a museum that also has this piece, I think, or there are two artists making the exact same piece. But it's really funny that you mentioned that, because when I was 10 years old, I went on a trip with my school, and we were taken to this contemporary art museum, and I saw installation art for the first time, and like my life was changed in that moment. And I still remember this museum visit so vividly. Like, I went into Yayoi Kusama's Infinity Room at this super young age. I didn't know anything about art, or
Can you say something about it, because I don't know what you're talking about?
I'm sure you would recognize it if you saw a picture, but it's like a room made of mirrors, so the whole room looks infinite, and it's full of either polka dots or little lights, and it just feels like you're in this infinite landscape.
I was in Japan. I was with my kids in Japan 2 years ago, and the most amazing experience. So like, first you enter totally dark, and you take off your shoes and whatever, and then you enter a room that has these LED strings with LED from top to bottom, and tons of them, and you pass between them, and the floor is mirror and the ceiling is mirror, and it just flickers and creates different shapes and balls, like pixelated balls that move, and you pass around them. And then the next room was huge balloons that when you clap, they go up and they change color, and the room is full of them, and you have to navigate between them. And then one where everyone lies on the floor, and there's like images of flowers and animated things on the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
And the last one is is like milky water up to your knees, and projections of fish and water lilies on the water, but they react to you, like they when you go, they go away.
Mm-hmm.
And like, because everything is full of mirror and you don't know where you are, it was amazing, really. So I guess it's the same sort of constellation.
Well, I think this experience also sounds really familiar, and I think it's from Team Lab, who is really pioneering these type of immersive museum experiences. And one of the first sort of artists to do that was Yayoi Kusama, and sort of she established this aesthetic, I believe. But so when I was 10, I saw her Infinity Room, but I also saw pieces by James Turrell, who is the one who made this sky opening hole. And all of his work is about light and very simple shapes. So he builds these rooms where you walk into the room and you just see this one huge illuminated, what looks like a three-dimensional shape. And they're all optical illusions. So it looks like a floating pyramid in the middle of the room. But when you approach closer, it's just the light projected on the wall in exactly the right way so that it looks three-dimensional. But the one that I remember so clearly from when I was a child was this, it just looked like a really large blue rectangle, almost like you were just projecting just a flat blue rectangle. And I walked closer and closer up to the blue rectangle, and then I realized that what I was looking into was a room. Like it was actual space, but from the back of the gallery was just this completely flat thing. And that like blew my mind when I was a child. And that was also like how I decided to pursue studying art, which I did for a while. And also I really wanted to be an installation artist because of this experience. And I'm still trying to kind of bring that back into my work somehow. I haven't quite achieved it yet, but I know eventually I think I will design these type of immersive experiences, I hope. But this, when I look back on that experience, it's the same thing as the piece that you mentioned with the chair. Like it's this play of something and nothing, sort of. Like, yeah, I don't know, disguising in this case of the blue square, he was disguising something as nothing, and like this three-dimensional space as a two-dimensional space. And I don't know, it just his work always seems so playful to me in that way. The same with framing the sky. Like, why not? It's so beautiful. It's already a work of art. You don't need to do anything to it.
I remember Kurt Vonnegut, which is one of my favorite writers. Once he wrote that like there was a first school student, and he wrote a phrase, the sky is so beautiful I could bite my toes, which is such a creative sentence. When you said this, I thought about Marina Abramovic, because I think I saw an interview with her, and she said as years go by, she tries to strip more and more things, like once she used arrows and like a lot of stuff, and now she uses a chair, and she says, where can I let go even of that? Like the performance is in the empty space, is not in the props that we use. And that's, I think, like the square of the sky. In fact, the sky is the object. The nothingness is the thing that you want to see.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I'm just going to jump in and, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Hands raised. Yes, Joshua, and also Sharon. I would love to.
I was going to volunteer Sharon. That was the whole reason I spoke up.
Okay, I'm really loving this, and I would like to know your opinion about how do you see the difference between I don't know if it's the word or the category or the label of or the difference between like museum, like how do you see it as a museum thing? What things go in the category of a museum, and what things are in a category of say, living theater or immersive theater?
Hmm.
Why is there a difference, by the way?
That's why I'm asking. Because you guys keep talking about museum. And I'm like, why museum? Why not immersive theater? So I thought I'd ask.
So I can have my answer, but did you want to take it?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Like for me, it's just convenience of words. Like Marina Abramovich, she did her performance as a museum piece, right? So you would buy tickets to the museum to see her. Why not? Like part of the idea of everything that we talked about so far is to break the convention. So if there is a clear convention of a static thing is in a museum and a person is a performance, then there's a space between them that you can break just to make all of this one thing. That's my
Yeah,
my
I
answer.
think museums they're just like sort of the default of where a lot of this work is allowed to take place. And I've always had an issue with that. That's also why I'm not attempting to be a fine artist or someone who exhibits in museums, because I don't actually like museums. I mean, it's a nice like activity on a Saturday, but I think the work that goes into like once you put work in a museum or you put a performance in a museum, you take, I don't know, there's a lot of life that gets taken out of it, I think. Or it gets this box around it, this very strong context around it that removes it very clearly from life. There's life outside and there's in the museum. And what I want to do with my work, and hopefully do with my work, is to try to blur those lines a bit more. And my medium now is games. And I think one of the reasons I like gravitate so much towards games is because they can so easily blend into just normal everyday life in a way. They don't go in museums necessarily. They could, like a game performance, Soulless, this game that I was describing, it could be in a museum just as well as Marina Abramovich could be in a museum. But I think it's much more interesting to play it out in the middle of the street with all these other opportunities for different people to encounter it and interact with it in this very spontaneous way, an unexpected way. Because when you go to a
I have to
museum,
tell you
you
something.
expect it. Yes?
Yeah, I told you that I had a meetup of people drawing, right? Did we talk about it? Like I had the meet. Okay, I'll make the story really short. I had a teacher who taught me how. Like I went for him. I took his course, whatever, to learn how to draw, and he taught me how to see. And it turns out that when you know how to see, drawing is easy and not as there's no big challenge there. The challenge is to see the things that you draw.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so meaningful that when I came to Paris after a few years, I decided to open a meetup where I do the same thing. So I take people and I help them, push them, I don't know, to draw out of the comfort zone, like to draw with the other hand and to draw two people the same drawing on the same paper. And to draw, only one person draws only horizontal, one only vertical, and to observe, and then close your eyes and draw what you saw. Lots of things like that, like experiments, or to draw with two hands at the same time. And why am I saying this? Because the advantage of Paris is that there's tons of free museums. And so we'd go into a museum, but we would end every meetup by sitting on the floor in a circle, passing all of my drawings I give to the person on the right, whatever. And then one by one, people choose the drawing of someone else that they want to talk about, and they show it to the group and describe why they like it. And the thing is that it was perceived as performance art. Like, guards will come to us and say, listen, are you allowed to be here? And I would say, hey, it's okay. So, there was something that breaks these rules of what's allowed and what's not allowed in this space. Like, there are explicit rules, right? You shouldn't touch the pieces of art. But when you come as a group and just, do drawing plays, if you want, it's something that the people who arrange the museum don't really know how to treat. Is it allowed? Is it not allowed? Like, what's this? How does it fit with the space that is defined in the museum?
Mm-hmm.
And that was really an interesting experience.
Yeah, like, can you make art in the museum?
Yeah, like Banksy, I love the story that, and he's not the only one, of people who come with some piece of art and they just stick it on the wall and run away. And sometimes it takes a lot of time until someone realizes that this doesn't belong.
Yeah, this playing with the rules is also a core piece of how I approach games, but also life. And I always give an example, which reminds me of this, sitting on the floor in the museum, of facilitating a very slow walk through the Rotterdam train station, through the central train station, with about 25 people. And the game was, we are going to enter the station and we're going to walk as slowly as we possibly can from the beginning of the station to the end of the station. And that's it. No other rules, just be silent and walk as slowly as you possibly can. And we caused such a disturbance in the station, not because, so I thought the disturbance we would cause, because I was walking along with the other people and I had designed this activity, but I had never done it before. So I was playing it cool as the facilitator, saying, yeah, we're just gonna do this. But I was terrified, actually, because I didn't know what was going to happen, or if we were gonna get arrested, or if this was against the rules. But, walking slow is not against the rules. So as long as we all had a valid ticket, which we did, there's nothing that should be against the rules. But we were walking so slow that people had absolutely no problem avoiding us. So what I thought was that we would be in the way, that people would be rushing around and bumping into us. But we were actually going so slow that even like a grandma with a cane was able to like very quickly go around us, like with no problem. But the disturbance that we caused actually was just this subversion of the expectation that you're supposed to be in a hurry at the station. And multiple people called the station security. Multiple people reported us to the help desks. And we were kind of being followed by the security.
Slowly.
Slowly, yes. And even one woman who was walking with us, a security guard, decided to walk along with her at the pace that she was going. So this extremely slow pace.
They
just to
played the
ask her,
game.
hey, exactly. They joined in, which was amazing. They didn't say, "Hey, stop! What are you doing?" And they just walked alongside her very slowly, just to calmly ask her, "Hey, what are you doing? What's going on?" And she just said, "Oh, we're in a workshop." And it took us about 40 minutes, I think, to walk from one end of the station to the other, which is like it's not that large, but we were going so slowly. And when we reached the end of the other side of the station, there was this group of like security people waiting for us. And
I thought there was a group of fast walkers that waited for you.
No, everyone, the people who were actually in the station, except for those people who were scared, just kind of like, they would look at us and like make a comment, but like so easily walk around us that we were not really a real barrier. But we were questioned by the security, especially me, because I was the organizer. And one of the security guards was quite angry, and he was saying, "Yeah, we should check all of your tickets, and this is not okay, and you're not supposed to do this." And then someone who I think was his superior said, "Wait, no, it's really okay what they're doing. As long as they scan their tickets on both sides, there's really nothing we can do."
Yeah, I thought that you walked so fast that your tickets expired.
Yes, almost. And I love in all of the workshops and games that I design, I love finding this space between sort of the social rules that we agreed upon and the actual rules or the law. But in between, there's this like kind of donut of possibility. There's so much that can be explored outside of this very limited idea of what's the cultural or social norm in a place versus what are the limits of what's actually allowed or is dangerous or is actually disruptive. My goal is not to be like violently disrupting the environment, but subtly disrupting the environment.
For what purpose?
For me, it's to show other people, but also myself, what is possible. Because I think we all live our lives a bit we can get caught up in what we think, what we assume are the limitations of what's possible, or what I should do or what I shouldn't do. And actually there's so much more like wiggle room outside of those self-imposed constraints. And that's, to me, what is freeing about play, is that
Awesome.
you free yourself from those assumptions.
Do you know someone called Peter Sharp, the liberator?
I'm not sure.
So 5 years ago, or 4 years ago and a half, there was a world event that sort of changed my life, and I'm writing. I'm going to publish it tomorrow on LinkedIn. And there was a worldwide eye contact event. So at the same time, in major cities around the world, people would gather in, I don't know, the main space of the city, like here it was in Place de la République, and they would bring 2 pillows and a chalk. And they would put one pillow on the floor, another one on the floor, draw a circle around the 2 pillows, sit on one, and invite someone to join them and have a minute or two, or a moment, if you want, of just looking into each other's eyes without talking. And it was so awesome, like it's first, of course, people come because they were invited, and it's great, but also the people who are curious outside the circle, if you manage to invite them to step in, you make people from outside your group play the game. Like one thing that surprised me a little bit when we played your circle game is that there was no one from the out, like people were passing by and they were curious. No one joined the circle. And in this activity, it's often that people like they they're curious, they look and they see the dynamics, and then like if you sit alone and no one sits in front of you, and you say, they just come and they join. And I remember one event like that. Anyway, so after this event, I organized a meetup here, not a meetup, a Facebook group that does this on a local basis, like once a month, gathering everything. I'm getting somewhere with this story. I just want to share with you one special moment that I had. One time we were in a small group, and there were immigrants, like Armenian builders, don't speak French, whatever, a little bit drunk, and there was one guy who dared to sit in front of a really beautiful girl, and they looked into each other's eyes, and he started crying, like laughing and crying at the same time. It was so overwhelming. And then he joined his friends, and then he came back. Like it's this dynamic of coming into the circle, going out. Anyway, where I was, what I wanted to say, I have a lot to say about this, in fact. Yeah. When I organized the group, I found 2 people to do it with me, and we went to public parks to see where can we do it, because I didn't like Place de la République, too many people, not too much noise. And we went to a park, and we explored where we can sit. There's some chairs, so you don't have to sit on the floor, whatever. And then when we came to the park, a group of people, the first time that we had a real event, the guards didn't know what to do with us, because we're a group, a large group, but we're not doing anything wrong. Like we're not breaking any rules. And we came to that park, the Luxembourg, I think, like 4 or 5 times. And after the 5th time, they said, you can't come here anymore. Like you're not allowed to gather, like you are too many people, and organized groups have to have permission to enter, whatever. And we didn't want to play with, like, to challenge this. So but it was interesting, the tension between, they see that it's, and they're smiling, it's not that I want you out, it's that the day that I represent want you out. Like I like what you do, but the rules that I have in my head about what's allowed and what's not allowed don't allow me to allow you into this park. And that was an interesting experience. And I want to say some more about eye contact, but first I'll let you breathe and respond.
I want to respond to Joshua's hand, which has been there.
I have an observation and a question. Maybe I can put the question out there to talk about after Dov's continuation. But I really like the vein of thought that we're on right now. I just started reading a book yesterday called The Most Human Human by Brian Christensen. And basically, the most human is the lesser known award in the Turing test. The human that gets the highest rating as likely to be a human by judges of the Turing test takes home the award, the most human. So Brian is kind of looking at this absurd award, and he's wondering, like, what does it mean to be the most human? Like, how can that even be a thing? And as he starts digging into the subject, he kind of arrives at this idea that we are a lot like computers in our regular operating. We have these codes, we have these programming languages that we kind of function in, these pre-coded responses. And it's neat, he uses this example of a customer service agent where he broke the little SIM card port that goes into your phone. He had to hold his finger down while he was on this call. And it's like a penny to make one of these things, but they're saying policy is you have to buy a new phone, like several hundreds of dollars. But he's like, come on, it's a penny to make. Like, can you please help me? And she's like, well, I'll talk to my manager. And she comes back like, company policy, we can't do anything about it. And then she comes back, or he's like, but you know, come on, please help. And she talks to the manager's manager, finally comes back and she says, we can make an exception. Then he looks at this word exception. It's really fascinating to think about, because an exception is when we've broken the norm of the rules. And it's really neat to think as well in computer programming, when we have an exception, that's an error in the code. The code has ceased to function correctly. Like we've completely broken the code. And it sounds to me like effectively these experiences that you're crafting are exceptions in the code. You're advertently putting malicious code into the average operating system that causes it to break down, computer viruses, if you will. My question, and we can save the question too, what type of motivation do you have initially when you start working on a project like this? Like, how do you see these ideas? Like, what is the actual conception involved in these types of projects?
It's me who's asking the question. What kind of ideas do you have? Yeah.
Well, I love this comparison to code. Since I'm not a coder, I love like seeing this little glimpse of this other way to look at what I'm doing. So yeah, the conception of a project. In very short, essentially, like most things that I do for work are designing different kinds of learning experiences. So that usually results in a workshop of sorts. And depending on what the learning goal is of the client I'm working for or the group that I'm working with, I will think of different kind of out of the box ways to investigate that learning goal or to make that learning goal experiential. So, for example, the general learning goal of the slow walking through the station was for students who were in a course called Power Play, and they were learning about different kinds of power dynamics within cities and within sort of systems in general. And this kind of subversion of the norm of the train station was a way for me to have them actually embody the kind of a shift in power dynamic, sort of. So I sort of take like high level learning goals and then I try to make them embodied in some way. And usually that's through play, because play allows people to essentially do new things or do things they don't know how to do without so much fear. So it's like a permission to do things we don't know how to do. And since none of us, I think, really know, for example, how to do something like embody power dynamics, like that's very abstract. Play kind of is the handhold to start into exploring that. And play is very exploratory and emergent, and yeah, that's why I think play is really powerful as a learning tool. But usually, yeah, to answer your question, there's some kind of learning goal given by the person I'm working with or working for, and it's my job to translate it.
Working for means someone commissions these games.
Yeah, I mean, like whether I'm designing a full-on game or just a workshop, it's really the same process of experience design. It's starting from the place of what do I want this group to experience, and then depending on sort of the context, whether it's an organization or whether it's students or yeah, somewhere in between, that kind of shapes the outcome. So sometimes it's much more like workshopy, and sometimes it's much more like gamey. But it's always on that spectrum.
And what I hear now is that, in fact, there's always a hidden goal, agenda, learning point, something, a rule to explore. There's always something there that is in the kernel of it.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't come from nothing. It's always a reaction on something in some way or another. It's a reaction either on a norm, on a rule, or there is a specific learning goal that is, yeah, sort of the desired learning outcome. But it doesn't always have to be so rigid.
Like I'm asking myself, is the fact that what you do is so lean an advantage or not? I mean, if you were given infinite budget, would that paralyze you, or would that boost you into larger projects?
That's a really good question. Mainly because I'm in the process of, well, conceptualizing and launching my own studio, which
So it does work. Awesome. We talked about it when I was in Nepal.
Yes, this is still the continuation of that conversation. Just me being extremely slow and reflective.
Like in the train station, right?
Yes, my natural pace. Yeah, so I'm trying to frame the work that I do in the format of a studio. And I've been asked this question by my coach. Okay, if you had, the perfect client and the unlimited budget and the sort of the perfect conditions, what would you want to do? And my answer so far is that I would really love to design essentially large-scale pranks.
Define a prank.
Like this word is not perfect, but it sort of gets across what I'm trying to, or what I'm thinking of, which is there are some organizations who work with very radical ways of training people. And sometimes this is called red teaming, or it can be a part of red teaming or wargaming. So there's this direct connection to play and games, but it's essentially immersive theater for the purpose of training. And one of the examples I got that really kind of blew my mind a little bit was that there are actually like organizations or studios that will conduct like fake kidnappings and kidnap like a CEO. And that the entire, it's like a very elaborate theater production essentially, but very real for the people who are involved, and with the intention of training. So with this clear learning goal, similar to the way that I work. But when I look at my work and I imagine it sort of times 10 or times 20, that's what you get to, is like essentially a very elaborate, detailed, immersive theater. Like, for example, having researchers, like design researchers, go into an organization disguised as maids, let's say, like as cleaners for 2 months and do like in-depth kind of observation research in an organization, and maybe even implement certain interventions in the organization, but sort of unknowingly. And then at the end kind of reveal the insights that were gathered, but using immersive theater as the tool both for research and for training. So this is like my very, very, very first ideas about this method. And I know that there's some...
It wasn't my question. My question was, would it paralyze you or not? So apparently the answer is not. Like what you're saying is bring it on.
Yes. Yes.
Awesome.
I would love to go bigger.
Like what you said reminded me, there's a caricature by Gary Larson of three mafia guys who come into the house of someone, and so you see them in the house, and the house is really in order, and they tell the guy who lives there, next time it won't be only our house that will rearrange. Okay. So like these people who come, cleaning people who come into the office, and I imagine that if I was there, I would make sure that they arrange all of the arrange all of the things on the tables, on the desks of the people working there in strange ways.
Mm-hmm.
And who knows if it's a real thing, or if it, shattering the like, imagine everything on the desk would be like this, would be in 45-degree angle when you come in the morning on everyone's desks.
Yeah.
It's the sort of games I'll do, I guess.
Yeah. So there's, again, coming back, this pervasiveness that I'm so interested in, which is like the blending of reality and theater together, but then in an applied context. And this is sort of what I've been thinking about for at least the last year. How do I combine these things in a meaningful way with the purpose of learning, but also, I don't know, bringing just a more radical approach into organizations that are stuck in ways of doing things.
Meaning what? Like, tell me a fictional story of what would happen. Like how what sort of organization and what sort of stuckness that you want to unstuck?
This is a really difficult question. But I think...
So I have to tell you something else. There was a sketch that I adored of like there was a panel of someone who interviews a lot of people, and he asks, tell me about something. And the guy says, this is an interesting question. And that's it. And then he asks her, and what about this? And says, this is not a bad question. And all the dynamics becomes, he asks questions and he gets rated for the quality of his questions. Like this is for 5 minutes, different interviewees, and all of the bounce back that he gets is just the quality of his question. So thank you for this feedback.
Yes, it's a really hard question, mainly because I don't know yet. And that's sort of what I'm trying to figure out right now as I frame my business. But this is also something I see as, well, my coach asked me to describe a service or something I'd want to do, let's say in 5 years. And this is sort of what I told her. And she was very optimistic and she was like, I think you could do this right now. And I was like, yeah, probably. But I'm still in a very beginning phase of thinking about what is the need of the client? What does this bring? And sort of what's the experience around it? But I will get back to you on that.
In 5 years?
Not in 5 years. I will not be so slow. But maybe
So I want to go back to the eye contact because I have something very specific to share. To continue the story, currently I got involved somehow in the Agile 20 Reflect Festival, which is like a month-long festival of events around the birth of Agile Manifest 20 years ago. And part of the reasons I left this organizational kernel is because there was too much noise. Like I couldn't. And I had an idea to bring silence into that festival. And I was thinking, how can I bring this eye contact experience into the festival? So I contacted this guy, Peter Sharp, who organized it in the beginning, and asked him, do you have any experience in using Zoom? How do you organize this experience of pairs that choose each other, then silent, all of this? And he said that I should contact another guy, Chris, which I talked to him last week. And it turns out that he created an application for this. So he has an app that allows you to say, I'm looking for eye contact, and pair you with someone random around the world who is looking for eye contact. And it gives you like small instructions on the screen to say, now breathe slowly, say hello, take 3 breaths together, and now just share the moment. And when you want to go out, press on this button and like say goodbye, press this button. Okay, lovely. And the problem is that it needs to have a critical mass. So currently we have the server running. We have an event planned, which is all day event. And we have like, we published 3 1-hour time slots in noon in Europe and noon in the US and noon in Australia, where people are, it's like sort of a magnet to help people join in that time. And we have very slow response. So one thing is, I would invite all of us, when this event is over, I'll give you the link. Let's go and try. So you can register. Let's take 10 minutes just to experience, because I would love to hear your feedback as people who experience this. But 2 is how to reach a critical mass. And this is something like, you can't play the circle game alone. I don't remember the numbers, but you said it's like minimum 10, 15 people, right? And the eye contact, once I did it and it was raining, and like there were supposed to be 5 or 6 people who joined me, but I was alone in the rain in Place de la République with a sign, there's a sign saying, where did the human connection go? Share 1 minute to find out. And I'm sitting in the rain and it's even melting the colors that I. And I said, no, I'll be there. And what kept me sitting is the knowledge that at this time around the world, there's a lot of people in Berlin and in Tel Aviv and whatever that do the same thing, that I'm not alone.
Mhm.
So this intimacy that you have with another person, and the other is the big back of knowing that you're a part of a large group. And like I was thinking about these people who walk slowly in the train station. If you do it alone, like the pressure on you is very hard, because the norm that you're breaking alone, it's really a heavy one. But when you're part of the group, if you change your perception, you're the majority. Like all of the important people here are with you, right?
Mhm.
Because so that's that's the thought I had. And also, if you have some ideas, also the people who listen, how do we reach critical mass to make some game sustainable?
Well, I guess the way that I have found around this problem, because it is a problem, you cannot play alone. Really. You can, but it's very hard. And
Kids do that, right? They say, "You're dead."
yeah, kids do it, but then we lose that ability. Unless you train it back. And I really think it's something you can train. But the way I have around this is by doing facilitated events. And I find it very difficult when someone asks if it's possible to design a game that is not facilitated. Like, oh, it's a game that people can play at any time, whenever they want, wherever they want. But the magic circle, the place where the game happens, is created in a large part by the facilitator. So that's what makes it possible for people to step in to the magic circle. So I find it a very difficult question, or a very difficult challenge to this idea of critical mass. Yeah, I'm not sure how to answer it, but
And the facilitator has to be there, do you think? Because I'll tell you why. In Agile 20 Reflect, whatever, I also have an activity with 2 other facilitators when we have a silent facilitator-less retrospective. So at the same time, people join into a mirror room where they have a poster with instructions. And the instruction is, choose someone as a timekeeper and do this for 5 minutes. And when you're ready, remove this post-it and see what's written there, and like follow as a group a wizard without any person to lead you there. So like everything is written. And not only this, we did exactly the same thing. Like they ran the same idea of a silent retrospective alone, where everything was in a wizard or in a room. I think it's in the same event that you were in Amsterdam. And then someone asked to do it a second time, and I said, I would love to do it, but I can't. I have another one. I will prepare the room for you and just go there and enjoy, and later tell me how it was.
But this,
So,
I believe this is still facilitated, because you've made a self-facilitating environment, and people are entering that environment because they're at a conference or they're at a festival. There's a framing around the whole thing. Again, that's another magic circle. People are stepping in to engage with whatever is there at the festival or at the conference. So I think it's very different than just having a kind of an app that is like free floating in the world, that is not attached to it's inside of a conference or it's inside of an event, that yeah, I don't know. I see that what you're describing as also as facilitation, even if someone isn't there. But you have put all of this
the
thought.
app is also a facilitation. Like you enter it and it tells you, do you want a human connection? And you say yes, and you click, and it says searching among the, I don't know what, 100 people, someone to be with you. And then it says, are you ready? Sit straight, wave at each other. When, like it's this, there's a facilitation process there. So what's the difference?
I think the difference is that it's, well, as what I understood, maybe I'm understanding wrong, that it's not a part of like another event or another conference or a festival, or like what I understood that you were describing of this this silent kind of retreat was that it's a silent retreat inside of a conference.
No, not necessarily. So it's a service that's open for everyone, but in fact, you don't know. And that's the nice thing. I can do the same event in conference A and in the outside world and in conference B, and people don't know because one thing that I didn't say, there's no sound. So everything that you can do is just look at someone else. So now, do you know if they're in their conference or no? I have no clue.
Well, I do think that getting people to do something like this, it really helps if it is framed by an experience like a conference or a festival, which is this sort of collective, you know that you're not alone, essentially. That's the thing that it's giving or that it's doing for you. Like, you know that you're not alone, you're a festival goer. That's why people like go to festivals, because they enter into this social contract of, these 1,000 people are going to be at this one place for the next 2 days, and we're going to share all the experiences that emerge in this time and place. And then people are super open to everything, and everything is great, and blah, blah, blah. But that's because there's this clear constraint around essentially the social contract and the time limit, which is different from, yeah, I don't know. I think all things like this are just much more successful when they're implanted into a larger cultural event, essentially. Or they're easier to engage with.
We have something like 15 more minutes, and we talked only about play. So what else didn't I ask?
Well, what I really wanted to hear from you, because you sent me a message after you saw me talk like 2 weeks ago, and you sent me a message to tell me that you thought I had, what was the word that you used?
Yeah, I'll tell you because I can peek into dialogue.
It was something about fragility.
Yes.
And I was so curious, and I asked you, what does that mean? And you said, well, why don't we just talk about it at the bonfire?
Okay, so I'll try to describe what I'm talking about. When first I met you, you're this small creature with a very small voice, and you have the power to get a big bunch of people outside their comfort zone. And this dissonance is something that for me is amazing. Like me, when I get people to do stuff, I have a big physical presence. No, sometimes like today, a team, I talked with the team and they said, yeah, we can't resist you. You know, it's when you say something, there's no way to tell you no.
That's a great skill.
But for me, the fact that with this physical manifest, you manage to get a big team moving outside is magic. Like it's I don't know how you do that. So how do you do that? Like what is the kernel in you that connects to a team and moves them?
I think there's something about just holding the space for people. I think I'm quite good at holding space for people to do things outside of their comfort zone. Also in the way that I present activities that I want people to do. I always talk about the magic circle being this place that you can only enter voluntarily. And if at any moment you need to step out, you absolutely can. And you have complete and total autonomy as a player. So there's nothing in my approach that is forceful. It's all very like, come if you want to come, don't come if you don't want to come. But still not like, I don't know, brushing people off for not wanting to join. Yeah, I don't know. I've never actually thought about what makes that possible, or what I do that makes that possible.
Yeah, I think when listening to you, I think part of it is creating a very clear illusion. No, like say you see, there's a wall here, and here's the window here. Would you mind looking through? See, and I'll move, and you create this possibility that is very concrete because you see it. And when you see it clear enough, you don't have to convince people that it's there because you see it. Is it part of the answer?
I think so. What do you think I see?
Like you see the circle in this example before it's done, you see where it is, and you see the rules as very clear rules with very clear logic that makes total sense before you explain them.
I've never thought about it this way, but I do really focus on clarity. Clarity is like my guiding, I don't know, my guiding light. Like that's what I feel like I can bring into the world in a lot of situations. And I'm able to describe instructions of what people should do like super clearly and in a very non-threatening way.
What does it mean, non-threatening? Do it or?
Well, I think sometimes if you've ever like been in a workshop, or you've been, I don't know, you're asked to do something that you don't really know how to do, but the way that you're asked is like, yeah, and then you just do this and then like that, and like just yeah, and you'll see, and blah, 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 and you're like, oh my god, how, I don't know, what am I, like you like get this like panic response because of the way the instructions are brought. At least I do. This is my experience. So I really facilitate from my own kind of, I facilitate the way that I would like to be facilitated, which is crystal clear and calm but with a kind of big ask, essentially. Like I'm asking a lot
Yeah.
of
Like,
people.
it reminds me, the first exercise that I would do in the drawing thing that I told you, I would say, now I want you to draw the object that you see, holding it in the opposite hand. And in any case, you're not allowed to look at the page until the work is done. Now, in the middle, you might feel a very, very strong urge to look. This is exactly when you shouldn't look. So like to create, it's sort of a game of rules, you know, like it's the rules are, you create an imaginary space and you go into a lot of details of this magical, non-existent kingdom that you just created with words, to plant a lot of details of, you know, like, and there's flowers there, and there's you can see the sky a little bit there, and you should go. Stephen Wright, one of the best, funniest people in the world, he said, when I was little, my mom used to put me to sleep, and she said, close your eyes and you will see a big, big path, and there will be two signs, and one sign says, go to sleep, and you take this road and you go straight until you fall asleep. And so one time I was curious and I took the road, but I took the other way. And at the end of this way was my mom, who told me, I told you to go that way. So like, it's a really nice fictional story that, no, it's a complete reality that exists in as a strong way as the real reality.
Yeah.
And I think that to create this, you have to have a very clear vision of the things that you created.
There has to be some kind of, like what you said about the drawing, when you want to look the most is when you shouldn't look, and you have already thought through the emotional experience of that person and exactly what is going to happen, or you facilitated it before, which is quite helpful. But you know there's going to be this emotional response at a certain moment, and if you're able to tell the person, you're going to have this emotional response. And when you do, don't do what you would always do. And this is like establishing a kind of safety in a way,
Yeah.
with the people who you're facilitating, which is definitely my facilitation style, is really holding people by the hand every step of the way, creating this super safe space. And then before you know it, like you don't even realize that I've let go of your hands and you are slow walking through the Rotterdam Central train station.
I have the answer. Okay. So there was an article that I read once which said, what are the 3 words that can win a woman's heart? And you read and you read and you read because you want to know. And then it says, it's not what you think. It's, I have this.
I have this.
Yeah, I have this. Like, don't worry, I have this.
Oh, okay. Like I'll
Okay.
take care of it.
Yeah, it's on me.
Mm.
And I think this is the creating space that you talk about, is we're going to break the rules. It's on me.
Mm-hmm.
I have this. It's okay. I'll lead you. I know what I'm doing. It's okay.
Yeah, exactly. You're what the people can fall back on. And you're saying, I'm setting out this whole thing, I'm creating this magic circle, and if anything goes wrong, it's okay because I'm here to
And even it
the
won't
guide.
go wrong because I'm here. Like I'm the creator of this reality, and I have enough grip on it that you won't fall. Don't worry.
And there's even like the possibility that it does fail, but that's also okay.
So it
Like
doesn't fail.
that's a part of it. Yeah, that sort of that it cannot fail. because no matter what the outcome is, it will be fine.
Yeah.
That's just part of the experience.
And that's the magic. Like if you know how to create this, I was, I don't know, we don't have a lot of time to go into the story, but just in small, I was once in an open space that was facilitated by the magician of open spaces. And I sat near him to see how he does this. Dan Mezik is his name. And everything went horribly wrong. And he did nothing. And I said, why are you doing nothing? He said, this is what's bound to happen. But no one is in panic because when they think, is it going wrong or right? They look at me and I smile, I'm there. So they know that as I am the master of the rules of this thing, then it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like the posture of I have this. If it's strong enough, you don't have to do anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
I see there's a hand raised. So this reminds me, let's invite the other people to ask, but try to ask short and like no speeches, just like, if you're curious, what are you curious about? What didn't I ask that you would like to ask?
I just wanted to pitch to Lily. Let's pretend that you have the power, because we have 3 minutes left. You have the power to hypnotize everybody in this room. We're all completely under your control, and you can make us do one thing, read one thing, or look one thing up. What would you use that power to do?
First of all, do you take the responsibility?
Do I take the responsibility? Okay, I will take the responsibility. Just this once. I would ask everyone to go out in their street and I would ask you to pick a color that you see in your surrounding and follow that color as long as you can. So if you see a pink, the first thing you see is a pink thing, then look for the next pink thing, and 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 just take an aimless walk following the pink things through your neighborhood and see where that leads you and what you notice along the way.
Awesome. So next time I'll go out in about a week or so, I'll do that.
Yes.
Anyone else?
I don't have a question, but I would say two things. If I'm allowed to, like, don't know, 30 seconds.
I give you the authority. No, we can finish after time. And, Zoom doesn't care.
Okay, cool. So I
And
mess
while you
up
do
and
this,
it's on you.
I'll try to. Yeah, it's on me.
Two things. I had a short disconnect, sadly, so I missed a little bit of the middle of the conversation. The interesting thing for me was Dov invited me in a style where I thought we two would talk, and he's literally wrote, "Come as unprepared as you dare." And if there's a challenge, no matter how stupid it is, I'm going full in. So yeah, here I am, and I listened to Lily Higgins suddenly, and it's super interesting. I was tempted to look you up, like, what are you doing? What is your background? Why are you talking about games? But I didn't. I was like, let's just listen, like meditation, mindfulness. Just listen without anything else. And that was an interesting experience. And one other short thing I wanted to add, well, like when you ask, how are you inviting people? How are you get them to join with being such a small person, I just wanted to add for a second my perspective, because I can relate to this. I'm a physical big persona. I don't look like, but I weigh like 120 kilogram. I'm fairly broad built. And a lot of times people came up to me after events or things and were like, oh, you're so aggressive on me. You're so forcing me. And I was like, but the words I used were please and nice words. So where's it coming from? Yeah, just your physical appearance. So I guess both types have some kind of advantage. And it's also an advantage to be small and non-threatening. And I think you can clearly see that as an advantage, as much as the advantage of being big and being able to force people physically in some situations. Not maybe exactly in facilitating workshops, though. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And
What
all
are the
of this is a
things?
question, Paul?
No, as I said in the beginning, I don't have particular questions. I just
Okay.
wanted to add two things shortly.
But I would love to talk to you. Contact me later. Okay. Now
Okay.
that you know more or less what you're getting into. Anyone else?
I have two things that I'm sort of burning with curiosity about. So the first is this notion that you brought in about games, and I noticed that I don't really understand what are the parts of a game, right? What are the sort of hallmarks, characteristics? What's the zeitgeist of a game? And I definitely want to know more about this magic circle that you keep talking about. Right? Tell me more about that.
Okay. Well, we have to have a follow-up conversation to like dive into this, but very quick game 101. The most basic way to describe a game is it has 6 main characteristics. There's rules, roles, goal or goals, play objects, play space, and time. So any phenomena that has those things can be considered a game. And even phenomena that don't have every single one of those things, I think personally can be considered a game. And the magic circle is a concept from Johann Huizinga, who wrote one of the most important, the first and most important book about the place that play holds in culture. And Huizinga is actually Dutch, so we're here like living in the Dutch play heritage land. And he talks about the magic circle as the place where play happens. So it's essentially the social contract that players make with each other, that we are going to step into this social contract and we're going to agree to play by different rules than those apply outside. So like when there's a soccer game or a football game, the players agree to step onto the field and play by different rules than those that exist outside the field. So that's in the most simple way, the most simple explanation, the magic circle. But I think magic circles go much, much further beyond just a playing field. But they also are about social phenomena. Like they can be applied to social phenomena. That's the word I was looking for. So not only games, but if you start looking at culture as play or as a game, you can see kind of infinite number of magic circles of places where people agree to play by a certain set of norms or rules.
It sounds like you're talking about the field, so to speak, right? The field that sort of is created in one context or another.
Yeah, it's like, it's just it's a kind of agreement, an arena
Oh,
in a way.
cool. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Last question, anyone?
Are you guys familiar with the concept of open space conferences?
Of course.
Yes.
I thought so. I was really curious in the mid of the explanation because that reassembles so much of what has been talked about in the last 1.5 hours.
Yeah. So I think like in fact my thing, let's say, is agile coaching and whatever, transformations, whatever you want to call it. And I think it happens in the place that magic happens. Like the possibility to let teams imagine something else and how it will work, and how changing the arbitrary rules under which we live will change their life. I'll give you an example from what I do now. I try to convince people by default to set their default Outlook settings to end meetings after 55 minutes and 25 minutes, and not 1 hour and a half hour. And this gives them 5 minutes of breathing time. And the fact that they can do this makes them realize that the choice of 1 hour is an arbitrary choice, but that they make every time that they create a meeting. So for me, the transformation part of anyone is examining in an explicit ways the rules that you take implicitly, and thinking, what will happen if we will change these rules? What will happen if we walk slowly in a train station? If you okay, how will the world look differently? And sometimes it's for your advantage or your disadvantage, or you find a new advantage that you didn't think of. But just this space of imagination is the most powerful transformation tool that I can think of. And I
this
think
is where
as
Dov
coaches,
and I align exactly.
yeah, like in creating the magic, in creating the illusion of this. And also I think that for me, the idea of I have you is a very powerful one. Like, make errors, and it's okay if you I give you the space where if you make an error, there's no error there. It's a learning, and I have this. You can't go wrong. Like a sandbox, the larger the sandbox that you draw around reality, the more there's space for discovering.
Exactly.
I think a powerful way to see this would be also like the way you look at focus in mindfulness meditation, to the point where you reach a stage where you have unfocused focus, like this universal stage of unconscious consciousness. And if you could manage to facilitate that, I believe that would be the meta level, the ultimate achievement, the ultimate frame, like the unframed frame, where you can make any error, where you can
Yeah.
do any learning possible, and even learnings you
The
couldn't
framing
imagine.
of the sky. In fact, the statue with the frame around the sky teaches you how to see the sky as a thing.
Mhm.
Okay. And you want to help me? Help me push the eye contact thing.
That's quite interesting. It remembered me of a social study where it was an experiment and participants had to fulfill like 5 different tasks, and the last task was to stare each other in the eyes for I think a minute. And that's why it remembered me. And it was simulating the process of falling in love with someone. And participants broadly agreed that just looking someone else into the eyes, you have this choice. I guess for me it was, there's a lot of times like, do I like that one or not? And you decide most of the times, yeah, sure, why not? And then that intensifies by a lot. That's quite interesting.
So I can share with you, but we're sort of, we're gliding into the end.
Yeah,
There's
definitely.
much more than this in eye contact. So for me, eye contact is where I reach the most meditative state that I had. Meditative to the extent that I would be aware of the change in the tones of the skin of the person in front of me as in the rhythm of a heartbeat. So like I would look at someone and I would see that the color is a little bit bluish, a little bit reddish, a little bit bluish, a little bit reddish. Because when you let go of the knowledge that your skin is constant and you just observe, suddenly you see differences that you were not aware of. So it's not only, you know, the falling in love, what you call, it brings you to another space. But we'll talk about it next time, perhaps, or when you come. Just I want to define something about this space. For me, the space is not only mine. So if you would like to invite someone and talk with them, bring them in. I'll host you both, and you will talk to each other, and I'll be part of the guests. Deal?
Deal. Is everyone in gallery mode? Can I get some high fives?
How do you do
I'm
that?
not in gallery
Yeah.
mode.
Yeah.
So if we all give high fives, who takes the photo?
Oh, geez.
Recording, right?
Oh, oh. It's all about the angles.
It's difficult. I have to. No.
I have an idea.
We're
I can
creating a
take.
culture right now, everyone. This is a culture we just created.
So hold on. I have a delayed screenshot. Okay.
I
So-
can help you with the photo. I'm not using my camera, so I can help you with that.
Okay.
I did
So-
one.
Xavier?
1,
Hear from you.
2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, good. Okay, I'll publish this.
Well, thank
Take
you
care,
all
everyone.
so much for being here.
Thanks so much for coming.
And if you
I hope to
ever
see
want
some of
to
these
talk
faces.
more
Oh,
about,
no, go ahead.
you know where to find me.
Somewhere in Holland, I guess.
Yeah, somewhere in
Well,
Hong Kong.
yeah. Bye-bye.
See you. Have a nice evening.
Thanks, guys. Kisses.
Bye.